Hello YouTube, Rambling Painter back again. Today we'll be painting this here Death Guard. Sorry about the shoulder there, I had to get started, I had to restart this one. So today we'll be talking about Elden Ring. Now with Elden Ring, there are good things, bad things, and ugly things with the game. Today I'm going to talk about all of them. So, and all of these are personal, they're my own feelings on this aspect, so don't take this as cold hard fact, because everyone feels it differently, everyone struggles differently. So for me, good aspects with the game. The game is beautiful. The game plays well. There is a lot to go and do throughout Elden Ring, a lot to focus on. The story is told in a wonderful fashion, and in a very sensible manner, considering normally with FromSoft games, all the lore is hidden behind item descriptions, all of that, and not too often do you get things straight up told to you. Elden Ring plays a smooth, balanced game between all of it. From Gideon Ofnir being a exposition dump once you've actually defeated your first Elden Lord, and then even further once you've slain two. From Melania giving you different hints and tips, even to some of the bosses themselves kind of spelling more out about themselves than you would think. Melania is a good example, or man, I've got the two, I'm very bad with their two names of Milena and Melania, who very similar names. Melania, Blade of Mikola, tells you very much who she is. And we've seen part of her story already in the intro. The game does a good job really touting these characters, really showing them off and showing you kind of who they are. While the deeper details, deeper story, are things that we find out through item descriptions. This game does it wonderfully, and a nice balance compared to most other games. They like to either completely tell you, or they can't even remember their own story. Elden Ring does a good job of hiding and playing with both. Gideon Ofnir doesn't want to tell you or talk to you much until you first beat Godric the Grafted, and that is because to him you are not worthy. Then it goes on, you learn more, you hear more, the more you play, the more you beat, and some of it you just figure out by looking at the world around you. FromSoft has a good way of doing this. And this is what a very good aspect of the game, personally speaking. I find it adds to really the discovery and interest of the game. Because usually with most games, you're given your story, you're given your reason for playing, reason for fighting, and here you're not given much except what you're here to do. And to me, that mystery is what drives me to play more than anything. See what I've missed the last time I played, see what is out there. The world is massive, and in a proper, good way. Normally, a lot of these types of games with big open worlds, big maps, there's a lot of empty space with nearly nothing to do, or they don't offer much to the story or gameplay. Not in Elden Ring. Elden Ring has found the right balance. There's enough enemies around that you don't often get swarmed in the main world, but you can still tell kind of what's going down. You still get a sense of the world itself and what is being offered. It also keeps you busy. You're not constantly running around with like nobody around you, barely anything to do, because it's just it's another building that has no entrance and no way in. Oh, it's another 5-mile trek until your next pit stop. No, the game really does give you a lot more openness, a lot more stuff to do, a lot more to focus on than many other open world games do in this aspect. And that helps flesh out the game, it helps it stay fresh, helps you be able to keep going back and playing even when you've beaten these areas, and even when you've finally done everything there is. It still allows a form of openness to keep you occupied and enjoy your time. Same thing too, the game does a great job with really, the combat is wonderful. All the different weapon arts and weapons. Yes, there are the occasional overpowered or broken concepts or things, but not too often are you going to sit there and be saying, oh, that's just too strong. Really, it's a lot of fun. And even now that they've fixed a number of the weapons that kind of were too strong, even the ones now that people still say have their drawbacks. Blasphemous Blade is not perfect by any means. Not every boss is going to be super weak to it, and not every enemy is either, because while its knockback is good, it does cost a decent bit of FP, and not every boss is weak to fire, so fire can be fairly hard to use. Plus, it is slow. Yes, it does cover a lot, but it's not perfect. And that, to me, is a great example of where this game does its job right. Even the Envoy's Great Horn, the new second most overpowered thing, it requires use of specific items. It's a specific setup to get you that far. Comparative to the sort of dark and light, night and day. I forget exactly. Forget the exact name. Its problem was that it didn't require much. Intelligence, faith, strength, and dexterity. It builds off of 4 different things. That is a powerful, powerful, powerful weapon. But that's why it got nerfed. The nerf was reasonable. Maybe a bit harsh on the nerf, but an understandable reason to be nerfed. So, there's fair balance amongst a number of weapons, a number of really cool weapons. Some of them may be a bit too weak, but not anything drastic. And then let's get into some of the bosses. A number of bosses throughout the game are beautifully designed, well played, and they feel natural. There are very few bosses, I would say, feel weird for their placement. Some of the mini-bosses, yes. Some of the mini-bosses, I'll say, feel like they shouldn't be there, or there's nothing explaining their purpose for being there. But with most of the actual bosses, they are wonderfully placed. There are good reasons provided and given for their existence, and I personally enjoyed almost all of them. There's none that I would say truly are problematic. I would just say there are problems with some of them. And a number of these bosses are beautiful spectacles, well designed and well chosen. And there is some of them that are fairly simple and easy, not too much trouble going on, but there are others that are quite challenging and really push your knowledge and understanding of the game, your own weapons and choices, and it really does give the game a beautiful feel and a beautiful outlook. Now, let's get into some of the bad parts. Some of the bad parts, I would say, are a few of these bosses and how the game feels. Now, I play on PS5. I got really lucky to get one. But I've heard a lot of optimization problems with PC, and a lot of people agree on that. Even people that are big fans of the game say that optimization for PC is kind of one of the biggest downfalls that Elden Ring has. Now, with PS5, I occasionally, very rarely, have some optimization issues. But they are very rare, very specific areas, and very specific attacks and patterns need to happen for there to really be troubles. But nothing that's gotten me killed so far. However, the biggest problem I have with this game really does boil down to some of the boss designs and playstyles. Now, I still really love this game, as I've mentioned, and I love pretty much every boss. And even my problems with them are minuscule and really have more to do with some of my skill and my play, because I've always been a strength build. I've never been one for magic. While it's interesting and fun to use magic, I never like relying on it because to me it feels cheap in a way. Now, However, the problem I find with a number of bosses in this game is balance. So, a good example, one boss that I find in my second playthrough incredibly easy due to me being able to level, focus, things like that, but very, very, very tough on the first playthrough is Radahn. General Radahn, the best spectacle fight that I think there's ever really been in a Souls game. And I say the best spectacle fight because that really is kind of what Radahn is meant to be. That is why he is so tough. That is why the Radahn Festival exists. You are meant to summon up to 6 summons. Now, all of these are NPC players. They're not real people. But they're all meant to help you in this fight. Now, how helpful some of them are varies. Some of them are surprisingly weak despite who they are, what their builds are, and stuff like that. Others are surprisingly powerful despite, again, who they are and what their build is. And, of course, you have a couple of trolls or, shall I say, bad choices you can make with your summoning or that just exist. So, for instance, the Finger Reader, I think it's the Finger Reader, or Finger Maiden, that is one of your NPCs, is not a good summon, but she does have some advantages. One, actually trying to heal you, and 2, she actually can survive a decent while Radahn chases her because she doesn't fight directly. Whether that's good or bad by design, it's kind of up to you how you feel about it. I don't think it's a good design. But to me, this is what makes the Radahn fight poorly built. It is the fact that you require so many people just to fight him, and for many people, he's not an easy fight. Even for me, when I originally fought him, I had to cheese him. And I say cheese, I mean cheese. I used Rotten Breath, and I ran away. And then I let the NPCs do all the work, because the actual strategy I was told about, when I tried finding his weaknesses, everything I found when trying to get an understanding what I can do to help with the boss, everything kept saying, don't do anything, bring the summons, and run. Now, sure, this comes down to skill, personal, and all of that. I could have done this differently. I could have had a much better experience. I probably could have been better at the fight. Because everything to do with the game, there is almost nothing in the game I would say is truly the game's fault. Most of the time, it's going to be your fault. You're the player. You're the one that has the most control. You just have to learn the patterns and play the game. But with Radahn, the problem is when his attacks are so powerful and so swift, it's hard to actually hit him. It's hard to fight him. Now, he's a fun boss, great for the lore, and it is a very wonderful battle and what it means when you beat him. To see the kind of power he was hiding and could not access due to his well-maddened mind. But for a lore perspective, it was great gameplay-wise. It wasn't as fun since I had to rely on other things just to kind of push myself into the victory lane. Is this a bad thing? No, there are all kinds of fights like this. Spectacle fights that had bad decisions, poor design choices. And this fight was amazing. It was a beautiful spectacle, and it held great story. It just felt like a bad fight. Now, in the second run, he was so weak because in New Game Plus, unlike in other Souls games, New Game Plus feels more held back, shall I say? Everything still feels rather weak. It doesn't feel like there's this mass jump in difficulty. And sure, normally in other New Game Pluses, you're still just as powerful and getting even more powerful. But in others, I still could feel like if I wasn't careful, first bosses could still beat me. I still felt like beginning areas you could easily be overran by enemies. Now, part of this has to do with sort of the changes in this system. Because the world is so much more open and there's not as much swarming enemies, it's a lot of enemies are a lot weaker in general because they're easier to divide and conquer. Same thing too, it also comes down to a lot of the bosses feel more, shall we say, they feel like they fleshed out the New Game Plus better to make it more enjoyable, even though, yes, it's easier, but that easier nature makes you feel more powerful, makes you want to try new things, because the game has so much to offer. Well, if I'm this powerful, what about this weapon? What about that weapon? What about that build? Most other Souls games, you have your set build, you have the one everyone uses, and you stick with it. And if you want to try something new, you don't work to change your build in that game, you just make a new character. In Elden Ring, it really feels like they're wanting you to stay yourself. Don't go and make a new character every time you want to do something new. Keep playing, change it as you go. Add more to it, because there's a lot of farming spaces. A lot of places where it's easy for you to go and get some levels. And this is good and bad, because it makes the game easy to break if you're not careful, but also gives you the most optimization and choices to yourself, to your character, what you're doing, than any other game has prior. Now, part of the problem too comes with multiplayer and players. There are a lot of things not optimized well for multiplayer. For one, the new multiplayer system with codes and all of that can be helpful for keeping it to yourself, your friends, people that you might be playing with. But it also can cause problems in terms of, well, let's just say it can make it harder for people that don't play with friends or that much to actually find summons, because sometimes if you're playing with passwords and you forget about it, and you just don't play with people that often, you don't gotta worry. But if you go to put down your summoning sign, you might never find somebody. Or, for instance, if you decide to be helpful, you can put on a password, but there are some people that might have accidentally put a password and didn't realize it. Now, sure, those are very rare occurrences. I'm not saying that they are everybody, I'm not saying it's everything, but like somebody else once said, the other problem is, too, now invasions are based on whether or not somebody has somebody with them or used a specific item. This makes the game easier for new players. Less likely that a new player is going to start up, go about, and then suddenly, hey, here's this dude that's played for 5 hours and knows all these combat roles and all this other stuff, and you don't know much because you've just started. It's your first time playing. So it does kind of help keep that in line. However, that also subtracts from some of the fun of a lot of other Souls games, where before it's that death race of, oh, somebody has just invaded. I need to hurry and either beat them or get to the boss fog before they find me. You lose some of that with the new system. The new system, while very friendly for new players, is problematic for, well, people that have played before. I tried it out myself, and incidentally ended up fighting the same group about 3 times. And all of this was for, yes, one of the NPC's missions. Another very good aspect, a lot of the NPC missions are fun. Now, although another bad part, poorly shown off. If there's one part, lore-wise or guidance-wise, I feel the game struggles with, it is the actual NPC stories. Where to go? What do you do? Well, the game itself doesn't really want to share with you. Whereas with guidance for where to go for general things, you get a lot of information. But there's some of them that are, so hidden, it's almost ridiculous. Things like Dragon Lord Placidusax, a very, very good boss that is really interesting, is so hidden that had I not actually seen a picture of Placidusax before, I probably would not have known he was ever in the game. Because there is really not much information on him, and I think there is like one note you can find. But I can't remember it, and I don't remember it actually being very informational, shall we say. Now, I still love the Placidusax fight, and I very much want more people to find him and experience him, because he is a lot of fun, and he is a nice challenge in his own right. However, that still doesn't make that where he is, finding him, feels poorly designed. However, when it comes down to some of the bad choices, there's so many more good ones, it kind of outweighs it. There isn't too much bad I can talk about. Sure, you could say, oh, these overpowered spells. But to me, that's kind of the thing. A lot of the overpowered spells are not... Yes, their power is insane. We've seen all the videos of Comet Azure one-shotting bosses in 5 seconds. But there's a caveat to that. Unlike with, shall we say, the Sword of Light and Fire... Night and Day, I really need to remember the name. Unlike with that sword, where it was just that powerful by itself. It required very low intelligence, very low faith, and not much strength and dex. The problem we face, that the spells face, is their requirements. Those spells require intelligence. They require a lot of things. You are a true glass cannon because most of the people you see using it have done nothing but focus their intelligence stats to get some of the better staves and get those spells high while suffering vitality, suffering strength and dex. So if they get caught out without these spells available to them, well, where do they go from there? Well, they're kind of left in the gutter, left with not much they can do. They will get killed very easy by most everything else. So it's not as though they are perfect things. And by time you can make them perfect to where you have to worry about nothing, you will probably be New Game Plus 2, to where at that point you've earned it. You've earned the right to be that strong. So it isn't without its caveats. It's things that make it more balanced than it would appear to be. Now, some ugly things with the game. If there was something I would really say is ugly about the game, it really boils down to... trying to pick my words carefully with this, because the ugly parts of the game have more to do with the experience and underlying designs more so than anything else. Great example is actually the very first fight, Morgat. Is it Morgat? Yeah. Or Margit. Margit the Fell Omen. The reason that I find Margit to be a problem is, like a lot of people have said, there is nothing guiding you away from him. The only thing that tells you that you should probably not be fighting him yet is how easy he beats you and how open the world is. Outside of that, everything else in the start of the game points you to him. Very first guy you see says, go to Stormville Castle. You start going to there, the fourth site of grace you stop at. When you first meet Melina, you are told, go to Stormvale Castle. You go through the gate, you fight all the people, or you just run past them because there is a lot there and it's hard to beat them. You get all the way up to the nice little Stormvale Shack, and what are you told? Oh, it's very dangerous, it's very dangerous. Here is this summon stuff. Here is this summon, so they may help you in the castle. So again, another guide to the castle with only the slightest warning against going there. Then we actually push our way through, and it's not an overly tough fight up to the castle, so, it can't be that bad. Then we get our first boss, Margit. Ugh, the two of them, very hard to remember which is which. But here's where we get the problem. That he is a very tough fight, and especially when the game first came out, not as much anymore due to the more reasonable spawns of all your shards, but originally there was almost no drop rate for any of the upgrade materials. They were hard to find, hard to get, and quite frankly, I only got a level 2 weapon when I finally beat him. But the game pushes you to fight him and pushes you into Stormvale before anything else. Yes, you have other places. However, if you continue around south, you get to the lake, and what do you find? Oh, a dragon. That is a way more dangerous boss. You go even further, and you find a bridge literally called, I believe it was like the Impassable Bridge or something like that. The actual name screams, "Do not come here yet." In fact, it screamed that so hard, I forgot about it until way later in the game. That was my fault, but wasn't without its reason for why I missed it. But there is a lot that the game just kind of seemingly guides you to be Stormvale and Stormvale first. So, I understand people's frustration with Margit, and I understand the struggle that is that first facing of him. And I understand why people say it's poorly designed, it's poorly set up, because he is very, very hard, and everything tells you to fight him first. Now, New Game Plus, he is still a bit chunky. And to me, at least personally, the reason I would say that I find Margit to be worse is a bad design choice, and a good design philosophy is actually when you fight him later as Margit. Margit, the Fell King. The reason for that is he feels there are some changes, yes. And he has a bit more resistances, and his health is a little higher. But the sheer difference in the feeling of fighting him, where now it feels much more reasonable. Your damage feels better. It almost seems to me as if his health hasn't changed from when I first fought him, because I beat him so easily. It makes it feel as though the idea is, hey, this will make the player feel more powerful. This is great storytelling, because here's the boss that they struggled with at first, and now he's a lot easier. The problem is, to me, it also screams this was meant to be a later boss. It screams to me that the first boss is super hard because it's a boss that shouldn't have been the first boss you fight. Now, that is personal. Like I said, that is how I personally feel, and everyone's going to feel a bit different. But to me, that's where some of the problems come up with the design philosophy of making your player feel like they've grown. You can do that, but you have to be careful when you do that, because sometimes you might end up doing the opposite. You might make it feel like the person they originally fought just kind of, well, shouldn't have been there. Now, with FromSoft games, they normally do a good job of this. Your first enemy or your first boss is very powerful. You die to it or something. You die to it, and you find it somewhere else later, and you beat it. So the power building makes it appear as though it's natural because, oh, you're in an area where this tough boss is supposed to be. It's supposed to challenge you. It's supposed to be hard because you're not meant to beat it. And then when you fight it later, you have finally gotten powerful enough to beat it. Whereas Margit screams, hey, I am here to make sure you don't pass. But you have to beat me to pass. Where comparative to normally, when you fight those first couple bosses and they're really hard, and they're not meant to be these roadblocks that you overcome. You are normally meant to die to them. You are meant to die so that you can continue, so you can get stronger. With Morgat, with them, the problem is the initial fight doesn't feel like you're not meant to die. You have to beat him to continue. There is no benefit to dying to him, except for just whatever experience you gained by fighting him in general. Now, when you fight him again and he doesn't feel that much harder, yes, he has more moves. And yes, I've seen some people really struggle with him, but every time I have fought him, I have not died to him when I fight him in the capital. And when I fought him in New Game Plus, I did not even die to him once in Stormvale Castle, but that's because chunkier health bar, chunkier build, I had everything available to not die. Now, I still love the game, and I love the story behind this boss. But to me, that is a part of a few design philosophies the game held bad. Same thing too when you fight Mohg, Lord of Blood. The first Mohg that you fight is so hidden I could not find him until I specifically looked up a video to get there. I am not saying that the game didn't have a way of showing me. My problem is that one pipe you're supposed to walk through that can start you towards him, I couldn't see it. Because I was trying to get to the Dung Eater, and I didn't see that pipe. I passed it, and then I never thought to go back down and look there. I thought you had to drop down into where the lobsters are in the other area. I did that, and then I found a different dungeon, a really confusing and wacky one. And overall, it was not a problem, but it was annoying, especially since, too, I actually ended up fighting Mohg, Lord of Blood first because I could not find the underground place, and I didn't want to search up videos when I started. So instead I start hunting elsewhere, and what do I stumble across elsewhere? Well, I get this ever so lovely little thing called fighting Mohg, Lord of Blood, and having no idea about what he does, and his little blood ritual, probably one of the only things in the game I'd say was not properly thought out, because there is a way to stop it. But only one way to stop it. And, well, two ways, two ways to stop it. One of them is very difficult and but kind of obvious, which is just out-damage him, kill him. Kill him before he can do anything, and bam, you've won. Kill him before he gets into his second phase, and you don't have to deal with his weird blood ritual. But that's not really easy and not something for everybody. However, the other way is a cracked tier. A cracked tier I don't even remember finding, because to me, the Flask of Wondrous Physics, I didn't get it at first. Kind of like with cracked pots and all that. I didn't realize, probably because I was bad at reading the descriptions, because I was focusing so much on playing, and a lot of the times special items were not the best in other Souls games. So I didn't realize these things actually got saved. Like, I didn't realize you didn't lose these items when you used them. Is that my fault? Yes, 100%. I am not putting that mistake on the game or the creators by any means. That was 100% me misunderstanding and overlooking something. But the problem comes that those are the only two ways outside of just straight up surviving his attack to negate that phase being so dangerous. And now the boss is somewhat difficult. Not insanely hard, but not anything I'd say is just going to breeze through either. you're still gonna struggle with that boss. You're going to find complications and have issues because the boss is rough. And he's not very friendly either. And especially since he kind of utilizes one of the most powerful things in the game, which is hemorrhage. Hemorrhage is an extremely powerful thing. And in fact, if you wanted to say, add another ugly part, it's how select things are super powerful. Scarlet Rot, there is almost nothing that Scarlet Rot can't stop. Pretty much almost no one can defend against it, and it feels wrong in a way. Same thing, too, with hemorrhage. Hemorrhage, because it hits through shields, and very few bosses or enemies are immune to it, it feels cheap. It feels wrong. But you're also supposed to use it, because you can use whatever you want. So I'm not saying that hemorrhage shouldn't exist. I'm not saying it should be really weakened, because there are pluses and minuses to a number of hemorrhage weapons. Some of them are really fast. But the problem is their low base damage sort of negates the danger of them, because you have to rely on the hemorrhage itself to be the damage. And ones that are really heavy do good excess damage, but they're slow, so it's a lot easier to get out of their way, or for some enemies to just, kind of not get hurt by them. There are some good and bad choices all throughout, because it's a game. Every game is going to have good and bad ideas. The games that work with those bad ideas and just keep pushing to be good are the ones that survive, and Elden Ring is going to survive. Elden Ring is going to grow better than most any other game in the market nowadays, because Elden Ring is trying to be itself. It's not trying to follow formulas, it's not trying to change things, and the bad ideas are just that, bad ideas, but that doesn't mean they're bad for the game. Sometimes it just makes you have to change things. It makes you have to understand things better. There are very few times I'd say bosses were poorly designed or enemies were poorly designed. If I had any real complaint where I'd say the enemies are just too cheap or badly designed, it would have to come with the Crucible Knights and Bell-Bearing Hunters. The Bell-Bearing Hunters, especially the one in Caelid, their health to poise to damage ratio is very off the charts, especially for what they provide you, which is usually a minuscule advantage and a bell that can give you some unique items, but normally it's an item you can easily farm out of somewhere else. So if you can farm it somewhere else, what was even the point in actually obtaining the item from that hunter? There wasn't, and that's, to me, like the bad joke. Now, I would definitely say, I highly recommend Elden Ring. Don't take any of my criticisms to be me hating it or saying, oh, you shouldn't play this. No, play it. The game is fun. It's a lot of fun. It's very, very rewarding. And there is a big community behind it. The storytelling is wonderful. There isn't anything that really feels out of place in the game. And so far, what few times I've seen people have genuine criticism, it's normally, shall we say, misunderstandings. Things where they didn't know how things worked, or because they're not used to this type of game. Because when a game is this big, you have people play it that don't know anything about that don't know anything about From Software's games. You get people that play that are not fully understanding of everything that's going to happen. They're playing because it's the big thing, the end thing. And especially comparison to the other Souls games, because this one, while it's by From Software, it doesn't have the name Souls slapped on it. People are more interested in this one. Like a lot of people and things, a lot of areas have said, this game has more new players than a lot of these other Souls games have ever seen. It's probably going to have one of the biggest followings of any Souls game. And I think justifiably so. But that also leads to an influx in confusion, misunderstandings, because so many of these new players are just that, new players. They've never experienced a From Software game, they've never experienced the Souls games. They're not going to fully understand kind of how everything works. They'll view some things as bad designs when in fact it's just the From Software design. Sometimes they'll see things in light of seeming off-putting because they're used to something else. That does not make their opinion wrong. That doesn't make their opinion bad. It just kind of shows some of the differences that From Software holds. It shows how much more their games can really do and push people. Because normally, people are going to be they're going to hold to what they know. They're going to hold to what they're used to. That's why some people say that the game isn't very good, because they're used to other ways of games playing. They're used to things being a bit more spoon-fed is kind of a rude way of putting it, but that's the easiest way to put it. They're used to not having to figure these things out. They're used to not really seeing these things. They're used to kind of being told to them. So for some people, that's a good thing. It offers a new way of seeing the story, a new way of hearing things, and some people like it. For some people, it's a terrible thing because they're not understanding it as much. It's not as fun for them as it could be. And that's understandable. Now, there have been some things going around with people having problems and major complaints. Some people just saying things like they don't understand why the game is being praised so much. And look, it's perfectly acceptable that you don't like the game, but one of the biggest takes I remember hearing was somebody said something along the lines of, games that are not meant for everybody should not exist. Now, my problem with that statement: if you're just meaning that they're made so everybody can play it, well, Elden Ring's built and made so everybody can play it. It has a tutorial area that's completely optional if you've never played one of these games before and you're wanting to learn it. It has plenty of storytelling that is told differently than From Software games normally are, so that if you're not used to their storytelling, you still get a form of story out of it without being left completely in the dust. But if you're meaning just because it feels like it's not meant specifically for you, or because some people will find the game's not for them, my argument with that is sports games shouldn't exist then, because I don't like sports games. They don't appeal to me. I don't like their controls. I've never enjoyed them, so they are not meant for me. But I would never say that. I would never believe that, because to me they exist for a group of people. There is no game out there that is completely built for everybody. There never will be, because not everyone's going to like everything. Call of Duty is one of the top-selling games out there, but that does not mean it's built for everybody. There's a lot of people that don't like it for a number of reasons. Same thing goes. Pokemon is not made for everybody. A lot of people like it, but it's not for everybody. You can never sit there and expect every game to be made for everyone, because it can't be done. Not everyone's going to enjoy things the same. Not everyone's going to want to do things the same. And Elden Ring, to me, is a great example of a game that you're either going to really love it, really hate it, or be unsure about it. There isn't that much middle ground you'll probably find, and the reason being is, for a lot of people that are used to Souls games, it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of interest, a lot of intrigue, a lot of stuff that, well, you love seeing out of your Souls games. If you're not into playing From Software or Souls games, it's going to be a tough challenge. So one that you might enjoy the challenge, or you might just not like it. Same thing too. You're either going to be unsure as to whether or not it's worth your time. Now, that's pretty much about all there is I have to say with Elden Ring. I do recommend you give it a try, see what you think about it. I would never recommend a game that I don't think people are going to enjoy. Sure, it's not going to be for everybody, like I've said, because not everyone's going to view it the same way. But I do think it's worth your time, it's worth your effort to see if you like it, because so many people are playing it, so many people are enjoying it. I feel that it will be helpful and nice for a lot of people to kind of enjoy it, to see it and see what it's like. And same thing too, there's so many ways you can play the game. If you try it one way and you're unsure about it, you can always play a different way. I said you're better off not restarting, but if you're just really not enjoying how the play feels for you, then restart, do something different. You don't have to stick with what you got. That's the beauty of any From Software game, because it really is an easy do your own decision. It feels like a better RPG than a lot of others, where it's basic stats, basic setups, not a lot of variation, shall we say. There's a lot that this game offers. Some of it for the best, some of it not. I personally would recommend it to people, but that doesn't mean everyone would recommend it to others. Now I'm just about done painting a lot of the fine details on this here death guard, so as soon as I'm done with this, I'll be wrapping up the video. It's been great talking with you, been great talking about all this. And like I said, everything I've talked about in this video, it's all just opinions. You can agree with them, disagree with them, like them, hate them. It is your choice. I am not out here to tell you how to feel about something. Same thing, if you have your own criticisms about the game, or even my own opinions, by all means, feel free to tell me, because I do like hearing other people's opinions. I like hearing other viewpoints, because to me, that's how you really grow a community. That's how you grow your understandings, is by hearing other concepts, other designs, other choices that other people have. So, once again, this has been the Rambling Painter, another on the Elden Ring, and just kind of, once again, rambling on. Well, all of you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next video.